Alright guys, how are y'all doing on this amazing evening? Hope you're all having a good night tonight on this June 26, 2021, and I'm back here with yet again another round of album versus album for you guys tonight. And tonight we have Doom Metal Legends going up against Sludge Metal Legends with Acid Bath, When the Kite String Pops versus Uncle Acid and the Deadbeats, Bloodlust. Let me get into a biography and history of both of these bands and albums, as I always do here on the channel. Acid Bath was an American sludge metal band from Houma, Louisiana, active from 1991 to 1997. Now, Acid Bath combined nu metal roots with influences from hardcore punk, death metal, gothic rock, and blues to create the band's unique sound. In a Pit magazine interview with vocalist Dax Riggs, he classified their sound as death rock. In another interview, guitarist Sammy Dewitt describes their sound as gothic hardcore. They broke up after the death of bassist Audie Petrie in a traffic collision in January of 1997. Rest in peace. Now, Acid Bath was an incarnation of two bands, Dark Carnival, which featured Audie Petrie, Sammy Dewitt, and Tommy Vader, and Golgotha, which featured Dax Riggs, Mike Sanchez, Jimmy Kyle, and Jerry Boone. Now, Golgotha's bassists were in frequent rotation, finally culminating with Chad Pierce, who would then be succeeded by Petrie during Acid Bath's formation, and Tommy Vader was later replaced by Jimmy Kyle on drums, but will return to play keyboards towards the end of the band's career. Now, Joseph J. Fornot was the bassist for a short period of time as well. Acid Bath formed in 1991, and the band was based south of New Orleans in several small towns, including Houma, Thibodaux, Morgan City, and Gallinio, influenced by thrash metal as well as bands and artists such as Black Sabbath, Alice Cooper, Celtic Frost, Carcass, and even Darkthrone. They recorded their demo Hymns of the Needle Freak with their manager and producer Keith Volgut in 1993, and the strength of their demo earned them a deal with Rotten Records, an independent label, and they released When the Kite String Pops, produced by Spike Cassidy in 1994, followed 2 years later by their second by their last record, Pagan Terrorism Tactics, my bad, and that was also produced by Keith Volgut. But neither really gained them any mainstream success, sadly, but both albums earned them a high degree of underground praise. And in 2005, another album composed of their demos, which is titled 1993 to 1996, was released, and I can get into much more about this band if you want. And if you want to see me go in a little bit more in depth of the history of this band, just check out my When the Kite String Pops review here on the channel. I'll leave a link down in the description. Now, Uncle Acid and the Deadbeats, or simply Uncle Acid, are an English doom metal band formed in Cambridge, England by Kevin Stars. And the band have released 5 albums, the most recent, Wasteland, having been released in October of 2018, as well as a number of singles. The band appears regularly at festivals around Europe. Now, the band's music is heavily influenced by the late 1960s when heavy metal is emerging. All music praised this band's ability to recreate a particular aspect of this era, describing the band as celebrating the summer's love of soul-chilling autumn, a blasted landscape post-flower power resembling Altamont's killing fields, wreaking the Manson family's murders, and naturally sounding like a mishmash of all of those apocalyptic musical forces that converged upon that era. The band has been described as the original Alice Cooper band jamming in a cell with early Black Sabbath and Stooges. In order to replicate the sound of that era, the band uses vintage instruments and recording equipment. Now, the band's name was taken from Rusty Day, the singer of Cactus, who later had a band called Uncle Acid and the Permanent Damage Band. Uncle Acid was originally the otherwise anonymous frontman, although he has since changed his stage name to KR Stars and now views the band members collectively as being Uncle Acid. Now, Bloodlust was the band's breakthrough album, which is the one we're versing up tonight, with the Quietus describing it as a glorious, identistic collection that quickly garnered a rabbit cult status amongst the worldwide doom fraternity and diabolical magazine referring to it as a groovy evil delight. All music described Bloodlust as a mixture of psychedelic rocks, harrowing, calm down, garage and punk rocks nihilistically ascent, and the earliest manifestations of heavy metal's occult-laced, nerve-damaging Blue Dungeon. The album garnered substantial acclaim, for which KR Stars remarked, "It kinda took everyone by surprise that the album took off the way it did." Now, with the release of the band's third album, Mind Control, more 1970s pop influences which incorporated into the music, a concept album, KR Stars explained that Mind Control is a fictional story about a cult leader who comes down from the mountain and brainwashes his disciples through drugs, love, violence, and intimidation. According to Metatroxic, the album has received universal acclaim with a score of 81 based on 7 critics. Now, Justin Norton, writing for Dekipo magazine, awarded the album a score of 8 out of 10 and described the album as a perfect union of the Sabbath riffs, fuzz, and Harshell Gordon Lewis. And now, without further ado, guys, let's get in to the battle. Now, starting with Acid Bath. The 90s were an interesting time for heavy music. Thrash went heavily down in popularity and gave way to groove metal, while in the underground, death metal was gaining more and more traction among fans of extreme music. And grunge was also one of the most popular forms of music at the time, and saw a lot of success with bands like Alice in Chains mixing moody soundscape with slow and heavy riffing. But down in the American South, something very, very, very unique was taking shape. That being the genre known today as sludge metal, with bands like Crowbar, I Hate God, and Acid Bath mixing together the aggressive tempos and energy of hardcore punk with thick riffing akin to that of doom metal, and creating a subgenre, while that not very popular, has maintained a steady following and has been a stream of quality releases from multiple and a multitude of bands. One of which is, of course, Acid Bath, who in 1994 released their seminal debut with When the Kite String Pops, an album that managed to flawlessly blend a multitude of genres that were popular at the time, from sludge, death metal, and grunge. And holy fuck, this is, and I couldn't say it enough, but this is a genre-defining masterpiece. Now on to Uncle Acid. You ever have a group of friends hotbox your room while you're sleeping? You wake up in a cloud of pot smoke, and it's like you're already groggy from waking up, but you're confused about the smoke and probably also kinda high. Well, this album, Bloodlust, sounds kinda like how that feels. You know, probably. Now, Bloodlust does schlocky fuzz-drenched 70s Sabbath worship metal better than most bands, and I'm counting Electric Wizard. Is there a god of drugs? I don't care. Imagine there is, and then imagine he went out of his way to possess the lead singer of this band. The vocals are possessed guys spitting out some drug god's gospel. It's hypnotic. The lyrics are specific enough to glean some meaning out of them, but vague enough that there's an air of mystery there. I gotta tell you, I really dig the swing beats, by the way. It just feels so right. The band that's Uncle Acid was influenced by were obviously bluesy old hardcore and doom metal bands from back in the day, and the swing beats really do those influences justice. I like the drums slow and plodding like the rest of the music, but with little hints of deftness here and there in the cymbal department. Now, back with Acid Bath, the album kicks off with the blue, as thick as molasses sludge track, which does an excellent job at blue-dozing the listener with its bass-driven riffs, which, coupled with Daxrig's stellar vocals, which range from a raspy yell to crooning akin to that of Lane Staley, create an atmosphere of likes which is hard, if not impossible, to find in most metal music. It is then followed by the tracks Tranquilized and Cheap Vodka, which kick the tempo up a notch, with the latter of which being stronger song on the album, clocking in at 2 minutes and 15 seconds and displaying some more hardcore punk sensibilities, while Tranquilized is a more grunge-influenced song, which is exemplified by its heavy use of clean vocals throughout its runtime, with the exception of the song's bridge and last verse. At the album's core lie some of its best tracks, like the Quashi Death Metal Assault, that is, which of course, one of my favorites being Jezebel, while its blistering double bass and crushing riff which make for what is arguably the most aggressive track in the entire album, which is then followed by one of the two ballads found in the album, and what I consider to be the crown jewel of this album, Scream of the Butterfly. A track that, despite its change in pace compared to the track that precedes it manages to not feel out of place thanks to haunting melodies and pace, which reinforce the uncomfortable atmosphere that the album creates. Now, the production is right where I like it for the kind of music with Uncle Acid. I do not want it all crystal clear and modern for stoner doom metal. I want something that sounds like a vinyl. Exactly what the band is going for sound-wise, but not so underproduced that it sounds like you're listening to that album through a tin can. Now let's talk about the riffs on Uncle Acid for a little bit. On Bloodlust. The album has got the riffs, fat, fuzzy, groovy-ass riffs that send you flying through space on a power chord to the beginning of time to watch the drug god nut the universe into existence. But wait a second, you're the drug god. I don't know. That one kind of got away from me a little bit, but I'm going to roll with it because it feels like the right description. Now back to Acid Bath with the following tracks, Dr. Seuss is Dead, Dope Fiend, and Dababo Kumi. They're more straightforward sludge tracks which involve a lot of tempo changes along with a multitude of interesting drum fills, courtesy of Jimmy Kyle, who manages to keep things tasteful with his displays of technical technique throughout the album, while also providing a steady base for the rest of the band to build upon. And the album is bookended by What Color is Death, The Bones of Baby Dolls, and Cassie Eats Cockroaches, and the former of which is another death metal influenced track, which also features an interesting solo around the 1 minute and 20-second mark, as well as some stop-start riffing from 2 minutes and 45 seconds onwards. And then you got The Bones of Baby Dolls. It's the second ballad of the album, and one that is quite somber and has a defeated tone to it, acquainted by the fact that the song simply fades away, unlike any other song on the album. The band then picks up for the final track, which is another sludge number that has some obvious death metal influences, also uses some vocal samples throughout in order to supplement the suffocating and aggressive feel to it. And with that, the album ends in a manner just as explosive as it began. Now, with Uncle Acid's Bloodlust, it's very much a powerful throwback to the glory days of early Black Sabbath. In fact, if you didn't know any better, you could swear that this was a lost Black Sabbath demo just with a different singer. This isn't the usual mindless Sabbath worship, though. This isn't this isn't the classic Sabbath style played effortlessly, uniquely. It's played uniquely, with a grimmer production, electrifying vocals, harmonies, and a superbly menacing evil atmosphere. This out Sabbath, if that makes any sense to you. The album conjures up a feeling of digging up graves at midnight beneath a full moon, black masses in the church basement, witches being put out of the stake, and drug fiends licking bloody knives over their victim's body. Uncle Acid's eerie falsetto vocals will send shivers up and down your spine. It's like King Diamond and Ronnie James Dio stole someone's child, raised it on drugs and blood, and taught it to sing. The guitar work is tremendous as well, ranging from the slower, doomy hooks on Death's Door to the up-tempo madness of which is of the album's opener, I'll Cut You Down. Uncle Acid must have dug up the stumps of Tony Lummy's missing fingers and performed some unholy voodoo magic to make these riffs like these. And the drums and bass are bang on to getting the job without stealing the spotlight from the guitars and vocals. The production gets a grit, authentic 70s feel from being recorded on ancient equipment and instruments. There's no studio fakery here, folks. Now back on Acid Bath. Lyrically, the album's quite varied too, with its central themes being addiction, hint the tracks The Blue, Tranquilize, and Dope Fiend, abuse and murder, Finger Paintings of the Insane, Jezebel, Screaming the Butterfly, and some tracks talking about religion, pain, and death, God, Machine, The Mortison's Flame, and What Color is Death. All of it is written in a somewhat abstract and poetic way and has some hints of dark humor sprinkled within the most of the tracks, and all that is carried by Dax Riggs' exceptional vocal performances and his flawless alternations between harsh and clean vocals, which further elevate the song's lyrics. Production-wise, the album is quite dynamically mixed, with every instrument getting a chance to be in the spotlight in just about every song. And it doesn't feel like they're fighting to be heard either. The drums have a very thick sound to them and really shine into more death metal influenced tracks. See the opening to Jezebel. And the guitars have a thick and somewhat fuzzy tone, whereas Audie Patri's bass can be heard at all times. Not just supporting the guitars, but also wandering out on its own on quite a few occasions, or even taking center stage. The vocals, on the other hand, have a very slight amount of distortion applied to them, but not to the point where one would think that they're completely edited to sound the way they do. There are live performances floating around on the internet, and Dax just sounds just as good as he does on the album itself. Now back to Uncle Acid. They're not your typical Doom album, as you can see. If you're looking for the Second Coming of Sleep or Electric Wizard, well, you'll be sadly disappointed. This is not Dope Smoker or Come By Fanatics. The songs found here are not slow, monolithic behemoths come to crush you under mountains of fuzz, tone and plotting beats. This shit is very psychedelic and overall amazing, and dare I say, more original sounding music. If this album had been released side by side with, say, an album like Paranoid, not only would the devil himself have taken notice, but we may be all looking back at this band today and wondering, whoa, who the hell were these guys from Birmingham? Now, on the other hand, with Acid Bath, you guys know, I always try to find some faults in the albums I usually listen to. But this is one of the rare cases where an album is flawless front to back. Acid Bath managed not to just put a great sludge metal album out, but an absolutely worthy of being, an album that's worthy of being included in discussions of over what the greatest metal album of all time just is. The follow-up to this, Pagan Terrorism Tactics, which also exceptionally falls just short of this accumulative height, so that when the Kite String Pops reaches, it's a real shame that the band disbanded and had a short career. But on the bright side, they left us with these two fantastic albums before they respectively decided to call it quits. Now, some highlights on this record include The Blue, Tranquilize, Jezebel, Scream the Butterfly, God Machine, and Dr. Seuss is Dead. And overall, you guys already know this album gets a 10 out of 10. Such a timeless album and one of the best metal albums of all time, no doubt. The best sludge metal album of all time, in my opinion, anyways. And I'm going to have to give Uncle Acid a 9 out of 10. So yes, Acid Bath does take the win for this one by just a little bit, though. There's no doubt in my mind that Uncle Acid are just as big a legends as Acid Bath. Go check out both of these legendary bands, nonetheless. And with that, that's going to wrap it up another episode of Album vs. Album here on the channel. If you guys enjoy, hit the like and subscribe with notifications on. Me and Chaos are working to get some podcasts done for you here very soon. Hopefully we'll have one out. Maybe we'll do 2 next month. It all depends. Also, if you'd like to see me review or cover any other bands on the channel, leave them down in the description below, and I'll definitely make sure to get to them. Alright guys, with that, like, subscribe, comment, and have yourselves a fucking good one. Cheers.